Chapter 15:23. In fact, it is also a good thing that we can sign a contract with a beast. Maybe it will have a better development. Dongfang Yu blinked his charming peach blossom eyes and hugged Baisher. Baisher, what do you think of following Hong Zhuang? Baisher was slightly stunned and then said without hesitation, following the master is the best. Following the master is the best. Xiao He and Xiao Bai also narrowed their eyes and spoke with a happy expression. Looking at the three beasts, the smile in Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes spread a little. She was able to contract with Baisher and the others. She also felt that it was a gift from the heavens. After Xia Jiqing and Yuan Xiaoman heard the answer of the three beasts, the worry in their eyes dissipated. In fact, most cultivators would be very concerned about their contract beasts. This was because the contract beasts were their most trusted partners. What's more, every cultivator only had one chance in their life to contract with a monster beast, so everyone would cherish it. No one would be stupid enough to hurt their own contract beasts. Therefore, most of the contract beasts got along very well with human cultivators. I don't think the situation of the three cubs is a big deal. Even if they stay in this small world, it is likely that they will be killed by other cultivators in the future. If they contract with human cultivators, the strength of the cultivators present is not weak. I think that their future will not be bad. The only thing that makes people feel pity is the mother wind spirit tiger. I am afraid that she will die here today. Xia Jiqing's eyes flashed with unbearable light. They wanted to contract with the cubs, but they had to kill the mother before that. This was a bit cruel. Gong Xiaoqing and the others looked at each other. If they really contracted with the wind spirit tiger cubs, then this practice was indeed a bit unkind. I am afraid that this situation is inevitable. There are so many cultivators present. Even if we don't do it, the other cultivators will. What's more, if we don't do this, the wind spirit tiger will not give its children to us. Yuan Jixin's eyes flashed with a serious light. He was telling the truth. Many situations were unavoidable. Xia Jiqing sighed faintly. She also knew that her idea was somewhat whimsical. However, Bailey Hongzhuang shook her head. It's not impossible to change, as long as we don't become the bad guys. As Bailey Hongzhuang's voice fell, Xia Jiqing and Yuan Xiaoman both looked at Bailey Hongzhuang curiously. They didn't know what Bailey Hongzhuang was talking about. Boss, do you have an idea? Bailey Hongzhuang smiled faintly. In fact, she could understand Xia Jiqing's thoughts, just like her own. With her relationship with White Lion, if she met White Lion's mother, she would definitely not be ruthless to White Lion's mother. It was the same for Xiao He and Xiao Bai. If he really did that, he would inevitably feel guilty when he interacted with his contracted beast in the future. She saw the White Lion crawl out of the demon beast egg with her own eyes. With a confused look on its face, it treated her as its mother. If she killed White Lion's mother, how could she not feel guilty in the face of such a White Lion? Later, the cultivators of the various dynasties will definitely find ways to force the Mother Wind Spirit Tiger out of the cave and kill it. Chapter 15:24. After Bailey Hongzhuang finished explaining her plan, Yuan Xiaoman was completely convinced by Bailey Hongzhuang. They were all intelligent, but why was Boss's brain so much more brilliant than theirs? Faced with such a situation, they felt that there was no solution at all. However, Boss was always able to come up with a solution. This was too much of a blow to them. Boss, how did your brain develop? Yuan Xiaoman looked at Bailey Hongzhuang speechlessly. The two ideas that Boss came up with today had shocked her. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. Think about it and you'll find a way. She had experienced many things in her previous life, and adding on to the things that she had experienced in this life, it was a total of 2 lifetimes. She had lived for more than 10 years than Yuan Xiaoman and the rest, so she naturally had more experience than Yuan Xiaoman and the rest. Otherwise, wouldn't she have lived for more than 10 years in vain? Mo Yunjua looked at Bailey Hongzhuang with admiration. Logically speaking, ordinary people would not know what to do when faced with such a situation. However, Bailey Hongzhuang was always calm in the face of change, and was able to think calmly every time. This was something that he truly admired. Moreover, he had never heard of such a method. What kind of powder could attract the demonic beasts? And it could directly make the demonic beasts attack the other party. Most of the time, this kind of medicinal powder could play a very important role. Gong Xiaoqing and the rest looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in admiration. This standard, this leadership, they really could not compare. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest spoke very softly. The surrounding cultivators could only see Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest talking, but they did not know what they were talking about. However, when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the others talking and laughing, and chatting in full swing, everyone's heart was a little curious. Logically speaking, in such a situation, the cultivators from the three great empires should have the absolute upper hand. Even the other two ordinary large empires teams did not look so good. Although Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were quite strong, there was still a certain gap between them. However, under such circumstances, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were still able to talk and laugh with confidence. This was somewhat hateful. After some discussion, Cheng Hufeng and the others had already confirmed the alliance. There were a total of 5 teams from large empires present. However, in their opinion, it was enough for the cultivators from their 3 empires to join forces. Ordinary cultivators were no match for them, so there was no need for them to find allies. After discussing the cooperation, Fang Wenqing and the others also noticed that Xia Jiqing and the others were chatting happily. They only felt that it was particularly dazzling. This was simply looking down on them. Take a look at the cultivators of the other teams. Which one of them wasn't on alert and on guard against the teams of the 3 great dynasties at all times? However, the Great Dipper dynasty's cultivators dared to be so nonchalant. This was simply a provocation. I used to hear that the cultivators of the Great Dipper dynasty were quite arrogant. Today it seems that this rumor is really true. Fang Wenqing's eyes were filled with displeasure. He hated people who dared to put on airs in front of him, just like Yu Junfei. Hearing this, Cheng Hufeng and Yu Junfei's eyes also fell on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Chapter 1525. However, if it were them, they would not care too much about such a situation. However, Fang Wenqing had always been a narrow-minded person. In his eyes, such a matter was not so easy to solve. In the next moment, Fang Wenqing stood up directly. A loud and arrogant voice came out of his mouth, clearly and loudly entering the ears of every cultivator present. The Wind Spirit Tiger's cub has already been taken by our 3 dynasties. If you don't want to die, leave now. Fang Wenqing's voice was overbearing and firm, not giving anyone a chance to refute. He believed that with the strength of their 3 dynasties, no one would dare to challenge them directly. In order to avoid the situation of fishing in troubled waters, it was better to get rid of these guys now. In this way, the next competition would only be between the 3 dynasties. As Fang Wenqing's voice fell, the cultivators present were all stunned for a moment, and their faces suddenly became ugly. This Azure Forest Dynasty's cultivator is too overbearing. He actually wants to drive us away and not give us any chance. Yeah, it's not easy to come across such an opportunity. Why should we just give up like this? It's not a big deal if we really can't get anything in the end. However, just based on his words, he wants us to leave like this. This is too much of a bully. Almost at the same time, all the cultivators present had a dissatisfied look on their faces. With such a great opportunity, no one would be willing to give it up like this. I didn't expect the Azure Forest dynasty to be so arrogant and overbearing, especially the person who spoke. Just looking at his appearance, it gives people a very unpleasant feeling. Xia Jiqing looked at Fang Wenqing with dissatisfaction. For this kind of guy, it had always been annoying. Mo Yunjue glanced at Fang Wenqing and said, "That's Fang Wenqing, the leader of the Azure Forest dynasty. His temper is fiery and arrogant. He has never been popular, but his strength is very strong. Hearing this, everyone looked at Mo Yunjue in surprise. They did not expect Mo Yunjue to know so much information. It was really unexpected, not to mention being able to determine the identities of the three great dynasties with a single glance earlier. He was actually even able to clearly understand the name and character of the leader of the Azure Forest dynasty, and this wasn't ordinary. In fact, along the way, Mo Yunjue was the one who told them a lot of things that they didn't know. Now, everyone felt that Mo Yunjue was their information database. If they didn't understand anything, they just had to ask Mo Yunjue and he would definitely get the answer. Feeling everyone's surprised and shocked gazes, Mo Yunjue smiled faintly and said, "I have a photographic memory, so I remember everything I see." Everyone nodded in agreement. They could only gasp in amazement at Mo Yunjue's ability. Bailey Hongzhuang's deep phoenix eyes were filled with a trace of cold light. Her expression was slightly heavy. Originally, they still had a chance to fish in troubled waters, but Fang Wenqing and the others suddenly made such a move, which made the situation much more complicated. In fact, it wasn't that she couldn't understand Fang Wenqing's actions. This was undoubtedly extremely beneficial to them. What should we do now? Chapter 15:26. Don't be impatient. Mo Yunjue's expression was calmer as he quietly observed the situation of the surrounding cultivators. No cultivator would give up such a good opportunity. It will be very difficult for Fang Wenqing to chase everyone away. Bailey Hongzhuang observed the surrounding cultivators. Just as Mo Yunjue had said, most of the cultivators continued to sit in their own territories and pretended that they did not hear Fang Wenqing's words. When Fang Wenqing saw Bailey Hongzhuang and the others' expressions change, a smug look appeared in his eyes. This was the result he wanted. However, when Fang Wenqing saw that the other cultivators did not show any signs of moving, his expression turned ugly again. "Did you not hear what I said?" Fang Wenqing raised his voice as his sharp and displeased gaze swept across the crowd of cultivators present. What a joke! This group of damned people actually dared to treat his words as wind. This was simply intolerable. Sensing the rising anger in Fang Wenqing's voice, the cultivators still pretended that they did not hear it. As long as no one left, they would definitely not leave. Facing the group of cultivators who did not move, the anger in Fang Wenqing's eyes had reached its peak. In the next moment, Cheng Hufeng and Yu Junfei both stood up. Now that they had formed an alliance, if everyone did not listen to Fang Wenqing, it was equivalent to not listening to them. This was absolutely intolerable. "Looks like you don't understand human language?" The murderous look in Fang Wenqing's eyes deepened. He turned around and glanced at Cheng Hufeng and Yu Junfei. At this point, if they still did not take action, it would be equivalent to being seen as a joke. Yu Junfei's voice rang out, "The cultivators who have left now are still able to come out unscathed. If they wait for us to start moving, casualties will be unavoidable." Yu Junfei's voice was not filled with anger like Fang Wenqing's. However, the viciousness in his voice was even more threatening. After seeing that the cultivators from the three dynasties were about to take action, the expressions of the cultivators present became extremely ugly. They were unwilling to leave just like that. However, if they didn't leave, once the three great empires attacked, only death would await them. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others continued to sit quietly. No matter what, they could not leave just like that. The entire area was dead silent. Other than the voices of the cultivators from the three dynasties, there was no other sound. At this moment, a cultivator stood up with an indignant look on his face. "Fang Wenqing, this small world doesn't belong to your three great dynasties. Since we're already here, everyone naturally has a chance. Why should we leave just because you tell us to?" The man's voice was very loud. He even turned around to look at the other cultivators. "Everyone, don't be afraid of them. We have quite a number of people. As long as we join forces, the three great empires won't be able to do anything to us." Hearing the man's words, all the cultivators present nodded one after another. Their originally nervous and flickering gazes immediately became firm. Just as the man had said, the number of cultivators from the three great dynasties was not as great as theirs. So what if they were stronger? Chapter 15:27. However, just as the man finished speaking, Fang Wenqing's figure flew over. Before the man could even turn his head, the sharp blade had already pierced through the man's body. Bang! The man fell heavily to the ground. His eyes were wide open, as if he could not believe what had just happened. However, the excruciating pain in his chest and the power that was gradually being withdrawn clearly reminded him that everything was real. Fang Wenqing swiftly withdrew his sharp sword and looked disdainfully at the man who had fallen to the ground. His tone was even more disdainful. "You want to challenge me with such little ability? You're really digging your own grave." The courage that had just risen in everyone's hearts was instantly extinguished by Fang Wenqing's action. Part of the reason why Fang Wenqing attacked was because the man did not expect Fang Wenqing to attack so suddenly, which caught him off guard. However, they were able to sense Fang Wenqing's strength from the way he attacked. Based on their abilities, they obviously could not defeat Fang Wenqing. Moreover, although there were many cultivators present, no one knew if the alliance was reliable. The cultivators from the three great empires had obviously discussed for a period of time before deciding to form an alliance. However, they did not have the time to judge everything at all. If they insisted on staying and the other cultivators ran away, would they not become a thorn in the side of the three great empires? If that happened, the losses would outweigh the gains. For a moment, everyone fell into silence. No one dared to be the first to stand out. After all, the cultivator who had fallen earlier had proven the tragic outcome of being the first to stand out. They did not want to repeat the same mistake. When the cultivators from the three great empires saw the situation, the smiles in their eyes gradually deepened. As expected, the three great empires were famous for their prowess. Ordinary cultivators would not dare to cause trouble with them unless they were courting their own death. Now, those who should leave can leave. Fang Wenqing crossed his arms in front of his chest. His face was filled with disdain and ridicule. "If you don't leave now, I don't have that much patience. I'll have to send you to hell one by one." Fang Wenqing's gaze swept across the crowd of cultivators. He enjoyed this kind of pleasure the most. With a simple sentence, the cultivators did not dare to show any emotion. This was the influence of a powerful person's words. As soon as he said that, there was a commotion among the cultivators present. Their eyes kept darting between the three great empires and the cave. They only hated that the wind spirit tiger could not give birth to its cubs immediately. If that happened, perhaps they would have other chances. However, there was still no movement from the cave. It was obvious that they would not come out anytime soon. "I'll give you 3 more seconds. If you don't leave, I'll have to do it myself." The sharpness in Fang Wenqing's eyes became more and more intense. These fellows really wouldn't give up until all hope was gone. He had already said so much, yet these cultivators were still trying to stall for time and wait for an opportunity. However, he would not let them have such an opportunity. 3. Fang Wenqing's voice was not fast. His gaze was still sizing up everyone. 2. Fang Wenqing slowly took out his weapon. Chapter 15:28. Damn it, the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty are really a group of lunatics. They act like they are the king of the heavens. It's really hateful. There's no other way. Who let them be stronger than us? Now we can only swallow our anger. If I am strong enough, I will definitely beat this Fang Wenqing down and make him lick my shoes. This guy is asking for a beating. Everyone's eyes flashed with a strong anger, but they did not dare to say anything in the current situation. It was all because they were not strong enough. They could only swallow their anger. Some cultivators of the medium-sized empires had begun to get up and leave. With their strength, not to mention facing the 3 empires, even if they were to face a dynasty, they would not have the slightest chance. Therefore, under Fang Wenqing's tyranny, they could only choose to leave. With the departure of the first team, the other teams with similar strength also got up and left. Seeing this scene, the cultivators of the three empires all had a touch of excitement on their faces. This was the strength of their team. The other cultivators could only stand aside obediently. As for wanting to fish in troubled waters and take away what they wanted, it was simply a fool's dream. These three empires are really shameless. What should we do? Xia Jiqing's face was filled with anxiety. If they left like this, it was obviously not in line with their style. But if they did not act, once the cultivators of the other empires left, the cultivators of the three empires would join forces to deal with them. Their situation would be even worse. Those who left are only those who are not strong enough. There are many ambitious cultivators who are not willing to leave. Gong Shaoqing slowly said. Just from the expressions of these cultivators, it could be judged that they did not intend to leave at all. Listening to Gong Shaoqing's words, Xia Jiqing once again looked at the surrounding cultivators. Sure enough, just as Gong Shaoqing said, the teams that left were all very weak. As for some of the teams that were not weak, they still stayed in place and did not have the intention to leave. It's better for these people to leave first. Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue looked at each other. Both of their eyes revealed a trace of understanding. It seemed that the two of them were thinking the same thing. The cultivators who have left now are all people with weak willpower. Even if we want to form an alliance, we can't form one with them. Otherwise, not only will they not be of any help, their departure will also greatly affect our morale. Mo Yunjue's voice was calm and indifferent. Once an alliance was formed, morale was extremely important. Once someone in the alliance decided to retreat, the rest of the cultivators would leave as well. Then, they would be utterly defeated. As long as they waited for a while longer, the remaining cultivators were more determined and had a certain level of strength. Only then would they be able to trust each other. With Mo Yunjue's words falling, Xia Jiqing and the others understood. They were wondering why Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue were not worried at all when things had already developed to this stage. It turned out that they had already planned everything out. Thinking of this, Xia Jiqing's original worry also dissipated a bit. With Boss and Mo Yunjue as the backbone, she really didn't need to worry so much. Chapter 1529. Seeing that the group of cultivators had left, the remaining cultivators remained where they were and did not show any signs of leaving. Seeing this scene, the complacent smile on Fang Wenqing's face dissipated a little. It seemed that the beating he had given earlier had not made these cultivators realize that they were not worthy of his attention. Are you going to challenge us? Fang Wenqing looked coldly at the cultivators present. He was extremely displeased with these people who dared to disobey him. However, the remaining cultivators were still sitting there without moving. They had no intention of leaving at all. The strength of the three great dynasties was indeed very impressive, but they were also not easily intimidated. If they left just because of Fang Wenqing's words, it would be too embarrassing. In the next moment, Yu Junfei's voice was slowly heard. I'll give you one more chance. We know very well which empire you're from. If you don't leave now, the three empires will definitely take your life if we meet you in the future. You have to think about this yourself. As soon as these words were spoken, the expressions of all the cultivators present changed slightly. This was in order to kill them. They did not care much about a head-on conflict, but they did not expect the three empires to be so ruthless. As such, it would take some courage to stay where they were. Among the cultivators present, some of them hesitated again after hearing this. The wind spirit tiger cub was very attractive to them. However, if they were hunted down by the three empires because of it, the price was not something that ordinary people could afford. Now that they were already in the center of the small world, the possibility of them meeting each other was very high. If the three empires wanted to hunt them down, they would definitely meet them in the coming days. They had to be careful. However, even in the face of the threat from the three empires, there were still some fearless people who did not care. At the very least, the teams from the other two large empires had no intention of leaving. The alliance of the three empires seemed to be very powerful, but the conflict between the Azure Forest Empire and the Cloud Sword Empire was well known. If it was not for the famous Martial Empire in the middle, they would not have formed an alliance at all. Once the matter of the Wind Spirit Tiger was over, the three dynasties would not be able to join forces to kill them. At best, they would only be a single dynasty team. They were similarly from a large empire. Even though their strengths were slightly inferior to the three great empires, if they were to leave just like this, then they would truly lose all face. This matter would definitely spread to everyone in a short period of time, and they didn't want to become a joke in everyone's eyes. All of a sudden, another three groups left. However, there were still a few groups that remained firmly where they were and showed no signs of leaving. Seeing this scene, Fang Wenqing and the others looked at each other. The remaining cultivators were a group of tough bones. It would not be easy to get rid of them. Looks like you really want us to do it ourselves. Fang Wenqing's voice was filled with coldness and viciousness. Many people would not give up until they reached the Yellow River. He wanted to let these people know how stupid their actions were. Chapter 1530. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the cultivators present. After noticing the firm look of everyone, she understood that they could form an alliance. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang was about to form an alliance with the cultivators, her name was suddenly shouted. Tiangang Dynasty, Bailey Hongzhuang. Fang Wenqing muttered Bailey Hongzhuang's name. The smile on his face was a little sinister. In that case, I'll use you as an example. As soon as these words came out, the faces of the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty became gloomy. This Fang Wenqing didn't choose anyone else, but chose them. This was completely looking down on them. F***ck, who the hell is this Fang Wenqing? He's so arrogant. Bai Junyu's face was full of anger. Usually when choosing people, he would choose the weakest cultivator. Fang Wenqing had chosen them now. Didn't this mean that in Fang Wenqing's eyes, they were the weakest? Damn, I've been unhappy with this guy for a long time. If there's a chance, I must step on his face and crush it. Xia Jiqing clenched her hands into fists. From the beginning until now, her heart had been full of anger. Getting rid of this annoying guy was tantamount to enforcing justice on behalf of the heavens. The eyes of the cultivators present were also twisted on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. In their eyes, the Tiangang dynasty was a very special dynasty. From the beginning of the assessment until now, the Tiangang dynasty had always appeared in front of everyone as a dark horse. They just did not know what they would do now that the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty treated them like this. Fang Wenqing sneered at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. He was really curious about this so-called dark horse. The most important thing was that Bailey Hongzhuang had obtained the final inheritance of the monument. As everyone knew, the inheritance of the monument was not simple. Since Bailey Hongzhuang had obtained the final inheritance, there must be a treasure on her. As long as he killed Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, the treasure would undoubtedly fall into his hands. His strength was already very good. If he had the help of a treasure, he would definitely be able to reach a higher level. He was destined to be an outstanding cultivator in this assessment competition. Cheng Hufeng and Yu Junfei also looked at Fang Wenqing in surprise. They did not think that Fang Wenqing would choose Tiangang dynasty to attack first. Although they had never fought with the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty, they could tell that their strength was indeed not bad just by hearing the reputation of the Tiangang dynasty. However, on second thought, they quickly understood Fang Wenqing's thoughts. Fang Wenqing was interested in the treasures on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. However, they were also curious about the treasures on Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue looked at Fang Wenqing coldly. They were already unhappy with the former's high and mighty appearance. Bailey Hongzhuang did not even look at Fang Wenqing and directly turned her gaze to the other cultivators present. Since everyone chose not to leave, that means that we will not give up on this opportunity. Now, the teams of the three dynasties have formed an alliance. Then, why don't we form an alliance too? Chapter 1531. I am not suggesting an alliance because they want to attack me. In reality, no matter which team is chosen, we will attack them. The three great empires have never had the final say here. As long as we join forces, they will not be able to do anything to us. As for who the Wind Spirit Tiger's cub ends up in, that is everyone's business. Our alliance will only be against the three great empires. How about that? Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze swept across the crowd of cultivators. She had originally intended to form an alliance, but she did not expect the other party to pick them. After hearing the words of Bailey Hongzhuang, the expressions of the cultivators present changed a bit. Just like what Bailey Hongzhuang had said, they too had the intention to form an alliance. Because forming an alliance was the only way now. They instinctively felt that Bailey Hongzhuang must have said such words because she had been chosen. However, when they saw Bailey Hongzhuang's calm expression, they felt that this might not be the case. When Fang Wenqing saw that Bailey Hongzhuang still had the guts to call for an alliance under such circumstances, his expression turned even uglier. Bailey Hongzhuang really did not take him seriously. In the next moment, Fang Wenqing's figure moved and directly attacked Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang's ears twitched. She knew that Fang Wenqing had already attacked. However, she remained rooted to the ground and did not move an inch. Ding! Fang Wenqing's sneak attack this time was not as effective as the previous one. This was because Mo Yunjue had been standing beside Bailey Hongzhuang the entire time. Long before this, they had already planned everything. Fang Wenqing could not help but frown when his attack was blocked. Even though it was just a simple collision, he realized that Mo Yunjue was very powerful. In fact, he was not weaker than him. After realizing this, Fang Wenqing's expression changed. This was simply unbelievable. There was actually a cultivator in Tiangang Dynasty's team who was on par with him. Even if everyone said that the cultivators of Tiangang sect were not weak, this kind of strength seemed to be a little too strong. When the cultivators saw that Fang Wenqing's attack was ineffective, they all smiled. Let us form an alliance. A cultivator spoke first. The cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty were not weak. There was no harm in forming an alliance with them. Let's form an alliance too. We'll join too. After the first cultivator expressed his opinion, the rest of the people also expressed their opinions. Given the current situation, this was their only choice. After seeing everyone agree to form an alliance, the smile on Bailey Hongzhuang's face widened a bit. It seemed that forming an alliance was easier than she had expected. The cultivators from the Wu Empire and Cloud Sword Empire couldn't help but turn serious when they saw this. Cheng Hufeng and Yu Junfei both stood beside Fang Wenqing. What they didn't want to see the most was everyone joining forces. Because once they joined forces, it would be very difficult for them to defeat them one by one. Are you sure you want to be enemies with the three empires? Yu Junfei's expression was gloomy and his voice was filled with threat. However, just as Yu Junfei finished speaking, Bailey Hongzhuang's voice rang out again. Chapter 1532. As soon as Bailey Hongzhuang's words came out, the cultivators present all nodded. Bailey Hongzhuang's proposal was tantamount to solving the last worry in their hearts, and they no longer had any worries. Yu Junfei looked at Bailey Hongzhuang fiercely. It seemed that he had really underestimated Bailey Hongzhuang. He did not expect that Bailey Hongzhuang would have such means. Since you don't know what's good for you, then we can only make a move. Yu Junfei's voice was cold. At this point, there was no use in saying anything else. The only thing they could do was to make a move. If you have the ability, then make a move. In the end, we still don't know who will win and who will lose. Xia Zhiqing's disdainful voice rang out. She had been watching how the three dynasties teams were clamoring, and now it was finally time for them to fight back. Yes, what's so great about the three dynasties? What's so great about them? Laozi has been unhappy with you for a long time. Another cultivator followed up. That's right, only you can form an alliance, but we can't. How can there be such a good thing? Under the oppression of the three great dynasties earlier, everyone had already accumulated a stomach full of vitality long ago. Now that they had the capital to compete, they naturally had to say a few words. Seeing this, the anger in Fang Wencheng's eyes became deeper and deeper. Why are you talking so much nonsense with them? Let's make a move. In the next moment, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others took out their weapons. Obviously, they were ready to fight at any time. In such a situation, the actions of the three beasts were not noticeable. When they returned to Bailey Hongzhuang's side, their task had already been completed. Done. Baisher waved his little paws, his face full of a proud smile. With his and Xiao Hei's perception, they had already noticed that the wind spirit tiger was about to give birth to a cub. Therefore, they had already informed their master before this. With such a situation, their actions were not noticed at all. As the two alliances really confronted each other, the faces of Yu Junfei and the others were a bit ugly. The other party had a lot more people than them. Although they were full of confidence in themselves, once the fight started, it wouldn't end in a short time. When the wind spirit tiger came out, their combat power would be greatly reduced. As a result, the situation wasn't optimistic either. What they hoped for the most was to scare all of these cultivators away. However, once these people joined forces, they did not know what to do. Didn't you want to fight? Do it. The group of cultivators also saw the state of the three empires and immediately mocked them mercilessly. Just a moment ago, you were still acting like you're very impressive. Why are you acting like a coward now? What three great dynasties? He only knows how to shout. His true strength is nothing much. Everyone mocked. They also wanted to let the cultivators of the three great dynasties have a taste of their own medicine. Do you really think I don't dare to do anything to you? Fang Wenqing said angrily. Stop dilly-dallying. Do it if you can. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled charmingly. Fang Wenqing was a fool who was brave but not smart. He thought that he was some kind of hero, but in reality, he was just a stupid pig. Chapter 1533. However, just as the two parties were about to engage in battle, a commotion suddenly broke out from the quiet cave. Sensing the commotion, the crowd's eyes turned towards the cave, and they could no longer be bothered with the battle before them. Once the wind spirit tiger has given birth, it would be time for them to snatch the cubs. In contrast to the crowd's shock, Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest appeared to be very calm. After White Lion's reminder, they had already understood the situation. Roar! A tender roar rang out from within the cave. Hearing this tender roar, the eyes of all the cultivators present lit up. The cub had been born. Fang Wenqing, Cheng Hufeng, Yu Junfei and the rest looked at each other and immediately decided on their next course of action. They needed to first get the mother wind spirit tiger out of the cave and get rid of it before taking the cubs away. Thinking of this, Fang Wenqing and the rest shot a resentful glare at Bailey Hongzhuang before charging towards the cave. Once the cultivators knew that the cultivators from the three great empires had no time to pay attention to them, they all rushed towards the cave. Similarly, they would not miss this opportunity. However, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others stayed where they were and did not move. Leader, when will those beasts appear? Yuan Xiaoman asked curiously as she looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. The three beasts' movements had been very discreet, and in order to not arouse suspicion, she had not paid attention to their movements. Now, she was very curious about the final outcome. If the powder could not attract the other beasts, it would be extremely difficult for them to snatch the cubs away. Bailey Hongzhuang looked around and said, "They should be back very soon. Let's wait here for a while and stay in the vicinity." Don't let the other cultivators notice anything amiss. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, the crowd nodded as they had an idea. Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest had also appeared near the cave, but they were not in a hurry to approach it. The cultivators from the three great empires could no longer hold themselves back and immediately began to attack the cave. As long as they could get rid of the Mother Wind Spirit Tiger, all their problems would be solved. However, the path to the cave was not wide, so they could not enter together. If they went in one by one, they would definitely die at the hands of the Wind Spirit Tiger. Therefore, their only option was to force the Wind Spirit Tiger out. Bang! Boom! Attacks were launched one after another, as everyone attacked the cave mercilessly. Even if the Wind Spirit Tiger did not come out immediately, it would have to come out before they destroyed the cave. Roar! The Wind Spirit Tiger also roared. Everyone felt as if their ears were about to be deafened by this roar. However, the group of cultivators remained unmoved and continued to attack the cave. Finally, under such circumstances, the female Wind Spirit Tiger appeared in front of everyone. The Wind Spirit Tiger's eyes were filled with ferocity as it glared at the cultivators. These despicable bastards! The Wind Spirit Tiger is out! Kill it! Fang Wenqing's eyes were fierce. As long as they killed this Wind Spirit Tiger, they would have succeeded. When he thought of having a Wind Spirit Tiger as his contract beast, he couldn't help but feel happy. Chapter 1534. The three dynasties all sent some cultivators to block the entrance of the cave. They could not let other cultivators have a chance to fish in troubled waters. The situation of the cultivators in the other teams was the same. Some of the cultivators went to deal with the Wind Spirit Tiger, while the other cultivators appeared at the entrance of the cave to fight with the other cultivators. Now was an excellent opportunity. Whoever could take the Wind Spirit Tiger cub just had to run away directly. After seeing the battle break out in an instant, the cultivators of Tiangang's sect couldn't help but look around. Why hadn't the monsters come yet? If they didn't appear once the Wind Spirit Tiger was killed by them, then they would have no chance. Xia Jiqing and the others couldn't help but look at Bailey Hongzhuang. They knew that the boss had never made a mistake, but they didn't know if there would be any unexpected situation at this time. Bailey Hongzhuang's phoenix eyes narrowed slightly. It was reasonable to say that the effect should have already begun, so there shouldn't be any problems. Took the wrong powder? The powder failed? This series of problems would not appear on her body. She believed that there would be some movement soon. Mo Yunjue also looked around curiously. He was really curious about the effect of Hongzhuang's powder. He wanted to know what the effect was. It had to be said that many times, the things that Hongzhuang took out would give people an indescribable sense of novelty. Over the years, he had experienced and seen a lot of things. Ordinary people could not surprise him at all. However, Hongzhuang could surprise him again and again. It was really interesting. A group of cultivators was fighting with the Wind Spirit Tiger. The strength of the Wind Spirit Tiger was very strong. With so many cultivators besieging it, it had not shown any signs of defeat. However, after Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked carefully, they knew that the Wind Spirit Tiger could not hold on for long. After all, it had just given birth, and its combat power could not be compared to before. Hongzhuang, don't tell me your powder has no effect? Seeing that the monsters had not appeared, Bai Junyu could not help but ask. Just like that, they kept waiting here. They really didn't know what would happen in the end. Feeling everyone's slightly suspicious eyes, Bailey Hongzhuang's eyebrows wrinkled slightly. There shouldn't be such a situation. Everyone felt helpless. If it was really useless, then they would have to rethink their plans. However, in the next moment, White Lion's voice rang out. He's here, you came? What's coming? Everyone looked at White Lion in confusion, not understanding what White Lion meant. However, they quickly understood. Other than the demonic beasts, what else could it be? Boom, boom, boom. Xia Jiqing and the others only felt the ground tremble, as if there was an earthquake. A group of monster beasts rushed over, and just listening to this momentum made them feel terrified. After seeing the scene in front of them clearly, everyone was completely dumbfounded. "Oh my god, boss is too fierce." Xia Jiqing opened her mouth wide and couldn't help but sigh. In their line of sight, dozens of monster beasts rushed over, and the surrounding trees had been directly crushed. This situation was somewhat similar to the demonic beast tide that they had seen in the Falling Cloud mountain range. Chapter 1535. Gong Shaoqing and the rest were completely dumbfounded. They had seen Hong Zhuang use this trick before, but it had not been on such a grand scale. Looking at the situation before them, Hong Zhuang was able to attract as many beasts as she needed. Wasn't this a little too terrifying? Mo Yunjue also looked at Bailey Hong Zhuang in astonishment. This effect was much stronger than he had imagined. Hong Zhuang was really able to attract all these beasts. She was able to achieve this with just some medicinal powder. This was simply too shocking. Bailey Hong Zhuang could sense that Mo Yunjue and the rest were looking at her strangely and could not help but explain. The cultivators from the previous time were not as powerful as this time. To be on the safe side, I would feel more assured if I attracted more beasts. Hearing Bailey Hong Zhuang's perfectly normal explanation, Yuan Jixin and the rest were at a loss for words. This wasn't an ordinary insurance policy. With so many beasts, even if there were quite a number of cultivators present, it would definitely be enough. At this moment, Gong Shaoqing and the rest could not help but sympathize with Fang Wenqing and the rest. No matter what, one should never offend Bailey Hong Zhuang. This was definitely a wise saying. Unfortunately, many cultivators did not know this and did not believe it either. Bai Shi, Xiao He, and Xiao Bai looked at each other with complacent expressions. They only felt that the cultivators from the three great dynasties were simply too detestable, especially Fang Wenqing. Hence, when they had scattered the medicinal powder, they had paid extra attention to Fang Wenqing. They believed that Fang Wenqing would soon experience the feeling of being surrounded by beasts. They did not wish to see such a detestable person again. The cultivators who had been dealing with the wind spirit tiger suddenly felt a violent fluctuation behind them and could not help but turn around to look. When they took a closer look, the cultivators were completely dumbfounded. They stared at the scene before them in disbelief, wondering if they had seen wrongly. Heavens, what's going on? Why have so many beasts suddenly appeared? What should we do? What kind of demonic beast is this wind spirit tiger? Why are so many demonic beasts coming to help? Since when did the demonic beasts become so united? What should we do? This is really 8 lifetimes of bad luck. Everyone sighed one after another. Such a situation was completely beyond their understanding. In their eyes there had never been any deep feelings between demonic beasts. What's more, these demonic beasts were not of the same race. Could this be a cross-race friendship? This was heaven-defying. Fang Wenqing stared blankly at the scene before him. Where did all these demonic beasts come from? It's impossible for something like this to happen. Yu Junfei also frowned. Originally, it was already a done deal that he would obtain the wind spirit tiger cub. Now that such a situation had occurred, a huge variable had appeared. The final result had become unpredictable. The smiling tiger of the martial dynasty, Cheng Hufeng, couldn't smile after seeing this scene. With so many demonic beasts, once their combat power exploded, even with their strength, they might not be able to obtain victory. Moreover, there seemed to be more demonic beasts appearing behind them. Chapter 1536. A group of monster beasts rushed over like the wind. Regardless of the situation in front of them, they rushed towards Fang Wenqing and the others. Suddenly being besieged by so many monster beasts, even Fang Wenqing and the others were dumbfounded. Why are these monster beasts attacking us? I don't know, it feels like we are in big trouble. Yu Junfei's face was extremely ugly. This feeling was tantamount to a cooked duck flying away. However, in this situation, what they needed to pay more attention to was not the wind spirit tiger cub, but whether they could even get out of here alive was a problem. Suddenly, the cultivators did not care about the wind spirit tiger cub at this moment, but all their attention was focused on the monster beasts rushing over. However, looking at the number of monster beasts gradually increasing, their faces became more and more ugly. They constantly fought with the monster beasts, trying to avoid the attacks of these monster beasts. However, these monster beasts seemed to have identified them and did not give them the slightest chance to escape. This group of monster beasts is simply crazy. Why must they attack us? Yeah, these demonic beasts seem to have taken us as their targets. If this continues, we'll be surrounded. Run. Otherwise, we will lose our lives here. What about the wind spirit tiger cub? Now that we can't even keep our lives, how can we have the mood to care about the wind spirit tiger cub? Let's run. Some cultivators found that these monster beasts did not have the slightest sign of leaving, so they no longer continued to stay and rushed to the distance. If they continued to stay here, they would only have a road to death. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the others found that this group of monster beasts had appeared, they directly hid in the distance, waiting to see a good show. When the other cultivators were driven away by the monster beasts, it was time for them to make a move. Ha! Xia Jiqing could not help but laugh. Boss, this move of yours is really amazing. Yuan Xiaoman's eyes could not hide the light of worship. Such a complicated situation, Boss simply solved it without any effort. If Fang Wenqing and the others knew, I'm afraid they would be angry to death. Look carefully. Fang Wenqing is surrounded by the most demonic beasts. Right now, he can't even protect himself. Dongfang Yu chuckled. Hearing Dongfang Yu's words, everyone looked carefully and discovered that it was just as Dongfang Yu had said. Fang Wenqing had the most demonic beasts in front of him. The smile in everyone's eyes gradually deepened when they saw Fang Wenqing's face that was filled with anger but did not know what to do. Serves him right. That guy deserves to be punished like that. Bailey Hongzhuang observed the situation in front of her. The number of demonic beasts was indeed not small. Even though there were many cultivators present, the number of demonic beasts was more than enough to drive them away from this area. I believe these cultivators won't be able to hold on for long before leaving. It will be time for us to make our move. Bailey Hongzhuang's ink-black phoenix eyes were filled with wisdom and calmness. She carefully observed the situation around her. In such a chaotic situation, it was still possible to fish in troubled waters. Fortunately, the three demonic beasts completed their mission beautifully. Every cultivator was sprinkled with medicinal powder, so none of the cultivators were able to dodge the attacks of the demonic beasts. Chapter 1537. Following the first cultivator's escape into the distance, many other cultivators began to flee as well. They could no longer endure the attacks of the monstrous beasts. The monstrous beasts' stamina was stronger than theirs. With so many monstrous beasts attacking at the same time, before they could finish off the first monstrous beast, the second monstrous beast had already appeared. As a result, they could not take it all in. They could only feel the origin energy in their bodies rapidly depleting. If this continued, only death awaited them. Hence, this was their only choice. Compared to other cultivators, the cultivators from the three dynasties had undoubtedly lasted longer. This was because their strength was not something that ordinary cultivators could compare to. Yu Junfei and Cheng Hufeng continued to kill the monstrous beasts in front of them. With their strength, they were not slow in dealing with the monstrous beasts. However, there were simply too many monstrous beasts. Hence, they could not finish them off in a short period of time. Why are these monstrous beasts attacking us like crazy? Yu Junfei's face was filled with confusion. He believed that everything happened for a reason. It was impossible for them to be attacked by these monstrous beasts for no reason. I don't know either. This situation is just too strange. Cheng Hufeng shook his head. No matter how he thought about it, he could not come to a conclusion. They had never encountered such a strange situation since the beginning of the assessment. It was equally strange if these monstrous beasts were here to save the wind spirit tiger. This was because monstrous beasts had never helped each other. As for the human factor, they did not dare to believe it. They simply could not think of anyone who could do this. Hence, they could only deal with these monstrous beasts in confusion. However, there are so many monstrous beasts. Even we can't hold on for long, Yu Junfei said helplessly. Cheng Hufeng's expression was also very ugly. If we can't hold on, we can only leave. Compared to Cheng Hufeng and Yu Junfei who were struggling, Fang Wenqing's situation was not as optimistic. He only felt that he could not hold on any longer. His mental energy was extremely tense. If he was not careful, he might be pounced on by the monstrous beasts. Facing so many monstrous beasts, once he was knocked to the ground, only death would await him. This situation is really strange. Fang Wenqing secretly spat. His eyes were filled with rage. However, no matter how unwilling he was, he could only choose to give up under such circumstances. I'll be leaving first. After Fang Wenqing said this, he turned into a rainbow light and rushed forward. He could no longer hold on here. Seeing Fang Wenqing leave, the cultivators from the Azure Forest dynasty followed him. They were also exhausted from dealing with the monstrous beasts. However, the monstrous beasts did not stop attacking. They chased after Fang Wenqing and the others. And beasts were as if they would not give up until they knew what was going on. Suddenly, the martial artists from the Martial and Cloud, who were bitingly. However, looking at their struggling appearance, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could judge that they would not be able to hold on for long. Chapter 1538. As Bailey Hongzhuang and the others expected, the cultivators of the Martial dynasty and the Cloud Sword dynasty did not persist for long. Because the number of monsters was too large, there were already cultivators in the team who were injured. When being besieged like this, once they were injured, the injury would become more and more serious, and in the end, they would only end up dying. Moreover, it was not only one cultivator who was in this situation. If they continued to stay here, the strength of their team would be greatly affected. The most important thing was that in the current situation, the possibility of them winning the Wind Spirit Tiger Cub was very small. Since they could not get the Wind Spirit Tiger Cub, this sacrifice had no meaning. Thinking of this, Yu Junfei made a prompt decision: let's go. With Yu Junfei's voice falling, the cultivators of the Cloud Sword dynasty were relieved. If they continued to stay here, they really did not know when they would die. In the next moment, the cultivators of the Cloud Sword dynasty quickly left, and some of the monsters also chased after them. Of the original many teams, only the Martial dynasty's team remained in place. Captain, we can't hold on any longer, why don't we leave together? A cultivator said. With so many monsters, he was already tired of dealing with them. Cheng Hifeng's face was very ugly, and his eyes were gloomy. He always felt that the situation in front of him was strange. Could it be that someone was secretly harming them? He did not believe that the monsters would attack them for no reason. There must be an unknown reason for this. Damn it, he still couldn't figure out where the problem was. However, to let him leave like this, he was really unwilling. Ah! A scream sounded, and a cultivator of the Martial dynasty died in the mouth of a monster. Seeing this scene, the cultivators of the Martial dynasty also had the intention to retreat in their hearts. Captain Cheng Hifeng's face was ugly, and he waved his hand, let's go. In the blink of an eye, all the cultivators from the Martial Empire left one after another, and the group of demonic beasts followed behind them as they left. This cultivator from the Wu dynasty is really unwilling to accept this. After the cultivators of the Wu dynasty left, Xia Jiqing also slowly walked out. Bailey Hongzhuang looked in the direction of the Martial dynasty. It seemed like the martial dynasty was still the strongest among the three dynasties. That Cheng Hifeng was obviously more scheming than Fang Wencheng and Yu Junfei, and also more intelligent. Then Cheng Hifeng must be suspecting that someone is plotting this. Gong Shaoqing's face was filled with wisdom and astuteness. Just from Cheng Hifeng's doubtful and questioning gaze, he could guess what Cheng Hifeng was thinking. So what if he's suspicious? By the time he finds out, everything will have been settled. Bai Junyu smiled brilliantly. No one could do anything to them. In this short period of time, all the cultivators and demonic beasts present had left, leaving only their team. In his line of sight, the wind spirit tiger was still frozen in place, licking its wounds. With so many cultivators attacking it together, the wind spirit tiger had sustained many injuries and was obviously out of energy. Chapter 1539. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others slowly walked forward. The wind spirit tiger noticed the movements of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others and suddenly roared. Roar! The wind spirit tiger struggled to stand up, its eyes fierce. Obviously, as long as Bailey Hongzhuang and the others made a move, it would definitely rush forward. Looking at the wind spirit tiger like this, the expressions of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also changed a bit. They could clearly see the injuries on the wind spirit tiger's body. The injuries were very serious, but it was still protecting its child. Roar! Seeing Bailey Hongzhuang and the others getting closer, the wind spirit tiger roared again. However, from the sound, it could be heard that it was strong on the outside but weak on the inside. The wind spirit tiger quickly rushed in front of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. It stretched out its claws and immediately wanted to pounce on Bailey Hongzhuang and the others. Roar! At this moment, another roar sounded. This roar was far more shocking than the wind spirit tiger's roar, and it was more shocking. Baisher jumped from Bailey Hongzhuang's shoulder and stood in front of the wind spirit tiger. With the roar of Baisher, the wind spirit tiger's expression suddenly changed. Its body could not help but crawl down, looking at Baisher in fear. This was the power of the Beast King. Baisher was a little proud. These days, it had been following its master to cultivate in the desert world, but the guy there simply ignored it. Its dignity as a Beast King was being looked down upon in such a blatant manner. For this matter, Xiao He and Xiao Bai had laughed at it more than once. Today, it finally had the chance to show off its power. Aside from the desert world, the godly might Beast King was still able to make demonic beasts submit to him. The wind spirit tiger looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and the others in fear. It was simply unbelievable that it would see the Beast King here. Moreover, the Beast King had become a contract beast of humans? Then, how strong were these humans? The wind spirit tiger did not dare to imagine. Bailey Hongzhuang turned her head and said to Xia Jiqing and the others, "You go and bring the wind spirit tiger cubs." Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Xia Jiqing and the others nodded slightly and immediately walked into the cave. Before, they had been paying attention to the movements of the cave to ensure that no other cultivators had mixed in during this time. After a while, Xia Jiqing and the others came out with 3 wind spirit tiger cubs. These 3 cubs were still very young and did not know what was going on outside. After seeing the 3 cubs, the wind spirit tiger's eyes softened. By the way, the wind spirit tiger and the wind spirit tiger, she had to admit that it was cruel to take its children like this. And take the cubs Hongzhuang. They Hongzhuang tiger. Were they not? They had Hongzhuang. And had Hongzhuang's and? Bailey Hongzhuang slowly walked to the side of the wind spirit tiger. The wind spirit tiger's eyes were full of vigilance, but because of the majesty of the Beast King, it just stayed in the same place. Bailey Hongzhuang helped the wind spirit tiger check its wounds. The wind spirit tiger was already scarred from the previous fight. After feeling the goodwill of Bailey Hongzhuang, the wind spirit tiger's tense body also relaxed, and its eyes looking at the crowd also softened slightly. Its body was full of scars and the pain was unbearable. Chapter 1540. Bailey Hongzhuang's actions were very fast. Not long after, Bailey Hongzhuang helped the Wind Spirit Tiger bandage all its wounds. "Let's go." Bailey Hongzhuang stood up and said slowly. Hearing this, everyone nodded and turned to leave. However, just as Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were about to leave, the Wind Spirit Tiger's roar sounded again. Roar, however, this roar was much softer than the one they had heard before. It contained complex emotions and was not fierce. Listening to this roar, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could not help but turn their heads and look at the Wind Spirit Tiger again. They saw the Wind Spirit Tiger slowly stand up and make a move that surprised everyone. The Wind Spirit Tiger slowly placed the 3 cubs in front of Bailey Hongzhuang. It was obvious that it wanted Bailey Hongzhuang and the others to take the 3 cubs away. "It is giving the cubs to us?" Xia Jiqing was dumbfounded. She really could not believe that things would turn out like this. Originally, they hoped that they could have a good contract beast, but after seeing this scene of affection, they decided to give up on that selfish thought. They did not think that the Wind Spirit Tiger would suddenly make such a move. It really made them stunned. Bailey Hongzhuang also looked at the Wind Spirit Tiger in confusion. She did not understand why the Wind Spirit Tiger would make such a decision. After all, the Wind Spirit Tiger had tried so hard to protect its cubs before. Roar! The Wind Spirit Tiger roared again and reluctantly looked at the 3 cubs. It then turned around and left. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others stood in the same place and looked at the Wind Spirit Tiger gradually leaving. Their mood was very complicated. It made the right choice. Xiaobai said slowly. Humans may not understand, but as monsters, they understood why the Wind Spirit Tiger did this. After it saw that I had formed a contract with Master, it chose to keep the cubs in order to let the cubs have a better future. Baisher saw that the people did not understand and could not help but explain. It felt that we would treat its children well. Hearing this, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others also understood. They did not expect the Wind Spirit Tiger to make such a choice. For a moment, everyone's mood was a bit complicated. However, as the Wind Spirit Tiger thought, they would treat the cubs well. In the future, the Wind Spirit Tiger would be their partner in life and death. Hongzhuang, let's leave too. Mo Yunjua looked at Bailey Hongzhuang and said. The other cultivators will come back immediately after they get rid of the monsters. If they were to be seen by the other cultivators, they would be attacked by the other cultivators. That would not be a good situation. Hearing Mo Yunjua's words, everyone immediately reacted. Let's go now. And Bailey Hongzhuang, the cultivators participating in the assessment would not be stupid, but the cultivators who were not to participate in the assessment cultivators would not be stupid. Would Hongzhuang they would find. And Hongzhuang was not a matter. Once they got rid of the monsters, they would definitely come back immediately. They still had 3 cubs in their hand. If someone were to come, it would be very inconvenient for them to fight. Let's leave in the opposite direction. We will not return to the city today. Gong Shaoqing analyzed. Chapter 1541. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were very fast, rushing all the way to the front. Fortunately, they had discovered an extremely secretive cave. They believed that no other cultivators would know about it. They only needed to hide in the cave for a while. Everyone was using their fastest speed. If the other cultivators were to catch up to them, it would be a real fierce battle. They knew very well that as long as the cultivators from the other dynasties thought carefully, they would realize that the problem was with them. This was because ever since the demonic beasts appeared, they had disappeared from everyone's sight. As long as they connected all the dots, the answer was self-evident. As for the cultivators from other teams, they did not care at all. If they really wanted to fight, they would fight. The cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty had never been afraid of any other dynasty's team. After Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest left for some time, the cultivators from the 3 dynasties returned to their original spot. However, after a round of investigation, The figures of the wind spirit tiger and its cub had long disappeared. Damn it! What the hell happened just now? We were chased by a group of demonic beasts for no reason, and the ducks in our hands flew away. Fang Wenqing sat on the ground as his face was filled with rage. He felt that this was the most unlucky day in his life. Previously, he had been surrounded by so many demonic beasts. Not only was he exhausted, his body was also covered with injuries of various sizes. Most importantly, the wind spirit tiger's cub had disappeared, and he did not even know what had happened. This is too strange. Yu Junfei frowned. He had lived for so many years and had never encountered such a situation. It was simply too inconceivable. We must have fallen into someone else's trap. Cheng Hufeng's eyes flashed with a thoughtful look. Previously, when they were escaping, they had also encountered other cultivators. However, those monstrous beasts seemed to have locked onto them and only attacked them. It was as if they did not see the other cultivators. Just this point alone was enough to prove that they had fallen into a trap. What trap did we fall into? Fang Wenqing's face was filled with confusion. From the beginning to the end, he had not noticed anything happening. This did not make sense at all. Just as the cultivators from the 3 dynasties were puzzled, many teams had returned to their original spot. After noticing that their cub had disappeared, they immediately looked at the teams from the 3 dynasties. Sensing everyone's gaze, Fang Wenqing said coldly, "What are you looking at? If we had gotten the wind spirit tiger's cub, would we still be here?" As soon as he said that, the other cultivators understood and smiled bitterly. They did not expect that they would lose the chance to get the cub just like that. Cheng Hufeng looked at the cultivators who kept returning, and an idea immediately appeared in his mind. "We'll just wait here. As long as it's a cultivator who's being chased by demonic beasts, he'll definitely return. If any team does not return, they are most likely the problem." Hearing Cheng Hifeng's words, Fang Wenqing and Yu Junfei's eyes lit up. "Not bad, this is a good idea." Chapter 1542. Tiangang Dynasty. Tiangang Dynasty's name appeared in everyone's mind. That was because other than the Tiangang Dynasty's team, every other dynasty's team had returned. Previously, due to the sudden appearance of the demonic beasts, they could not pay attention to their surroundings at all. Now, it seemed that it was most likely done by the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators. Tiangang Dynasty. Cheng Hufeng narrowed his eyes. He felt that this must be man-made, and the answer had already been revealed. If it were any other cultivator who did not obtain the wind spirit tiger's cub, they would definitely return unwillingly. However, with the strength of the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators, it was impossible for them to be completely annihilated by the demonic beast. Therefore, there was only one explanation: everything was planned by the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators. For a moment, everyone's expression became extremely ugly. They did not expect that they would be set up by the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators. This was too depressing. Damn the Tiangang Dynasty! Fang Wenqing was furious. Now that he thought about it, the reason why the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators could be so comfortable and relaxed was most likely because they had already planned everything. That was why they were able to be so relaxed. If I meet the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators again, I will definitely kill them. Fang Wenqing's anger could not be quelled. He should have killed the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators earlier. Then, such a problem would not have occurred now. Oh my god, it was actually done by the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators. This is really unexpected. How did they do it? This is too difficult. They were still in an alliance with us earlier. I didn't expect them to have already planned everything. At this moment, everyone reacted. Some were disgusted and some were impressed. From the perspective of a bystander, they had to admit that the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators were indeed capable. It was impossible for ordinary cultivators to think of such a method, but the Tiangang Dynasty's cultivators did it. Until now, after knowing everything, They still did not understand how Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest attracted the demonic beasts and only attacked them. The cultivators from the 3 dynasties looked at each other. They did not expect their flawless plan to be defeated by a small dynasty's team. Once this news got out, they would really lose face. In the next moment, Yu Junfei brought the group of cultivators and left. Let's go. Now that he knew the truth, there was no point in continuing to stay in the same place. It would only make him look foolish. Fang Wenqing coldly glanced at Yu Junfei, and immediately left with his team of cultivators. He knew that cooperating with a guy like Yu Junfei would not bring him any benefit. Now it was still a situation of losing everything. His team had even lost a cultivator. It was simply not worth it. The cultivator from the Martial dynasty didn't stay either. He quickly left as well. They believed that even if Bailey Hongzhuang and the others obtained the Wind Spirit Tiger Cub now, it would be useless, because there were no sealing masters. As long as there was no sealing master, the Wind Spirit Tiger Cub would not be able to be sealed into a demonic beast egg. As a result, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others could only carry the Wind Spirit Tiger Cub around. Chapter 1543. After the cultivators of the 3 dynasties left, the cultivators of the other dynasties were also aware of this. In fact, not only the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty, even if they obtained the cub of the Wind Spirit Tiger, they could only keep it by their side. Only after the end of the assessment could they contract with the Wind Spirit Tiger. Therefore, they still had a chance. As long as they found the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty, they could take the Wind Spirit Tiger as their own. After the cultivators of the 3 dynasties indifferently left for a distance, they flew away. They believed that the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty would not be far away. They must find the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty before the other cultivators. Otherwise, once they wandered around, there would be no hope in the end. While the other cultivators were struggling to find, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others had already arrived at the hidden cave. This was also an accidental discovery when they were chasing the monsters. It was extremely hidden, and it was impossible for ordinary cultivators to find this place. Originally, they did not pay much attention to this cave after discovering it. After all, it had no use for them. They did not expect that this cave would help them a lot. It was really unexpected. Everyone sat down in the cave and restrained their aura. The location of their cave was not very far. Once it was discovered by the cultivators of the other dynasties, it would be troublesome. I can guarantee that those cultivators must have gone back and found out that the problem is with us. Dongfang Yu's face was filled with a faint smile. After thinking carefully, he had already thought of the development of this matter. Listening to Dongfang Yu's words, everyone nodded. This was also what they thought. So, they must be looking for our figures. We have to try to restrain our aura and not be discovered by them. Gong Shaoqing said. As long as those cultivators searched this area, they would not come back. The most dangerous place was the safest place. Many times this was very true. I can already imagine Fang Wenqing's furious expression when he comes back and finds out that the cub of the Wind Spirit Tiger was taken away by us, haha. Xia Jiqing could not help but laugh out loud. Fang Wenqing's appearance before was really too annoying. With his temperament, he must have gone crazy by now. Smiles appeared on everyone's faces. Fang Wenqing had been so full of himself before, so his expression must be very interesting now. That kind of guy should be taught a lesson like this, quietly infuriating him to death. Yuan Xiaoman laughed. Looks like we have a lot more enemies this time. Mo Yunjue sat down where he was, his handsome face filled with a playful chuckle. Speaking of which, there weren't many teams that could cause as much trouble as they did. Everyone shrugged. In fact, they didn't want to cause so much trouble. However, these troubles would always inexplicably find them. Thus, they could only deal with it. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the 3 Wind Spirit Tiger cubs who were still in a daze. Her beautiful eyes were filled with tenderness as she held them in her arms. These little fellows had just been born and had already experienced so many things, but they were still unaware of it. Chapter 1544. As Xia Jiqing's voice fell, everyone looked at Bailey Hongzhuang. In fact, they had never seen a sealer before and did not understand how a sealer sealed a monster egg. However, from the small number of sealers, they knew that sealing was definitely not a simple matter. Although Hongzhuang told them that she knew how to seal, this was really suspicious. This sealing technique was obviously not something that ordinary cultivators could come into contact with. In some small dynasties, it was impossible for a sealer to exist. Hongzhuang's previous identity was the daughter of the general's house of Feng Bo country. It was reasonable to say that it was impossible for her to come into contact with all this. However, when they thought about how many incredible things had happened to Hongzhuang, they felt that this matter was not impossible. Therefore, now everyone just stared at Bailey Hongzhuang, waiting for the former to give them an answer. Mo Yunjue also looked at Bailey Hongzhuang in surprise. He had seen a sealer before. Every sealer was a high existence and had certain eccentricities. In short, they were not very good people to deal with. Moreover, the sealers he had seen were very old. It was said that the young sealers had a high chance of failure. Once the seal failed, the monster's life would also be lost. Therefore, the young sealers could only try to seal some monster beasts that were only for ornamental purposes. Even so, the possibility of failure was still very high. The higher the level of the monster, the more difficult it was to seal and the higher the failure rate. With Hongzhuang's age, it should be very difficult to seal the wind spirit tiger. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the 3 wind spirit tigers in front of her, then smiled and said, "Let's wait for the various dynasties to search before we seal them." The sealing technique had always been a method that required patience. It usually required an absolutely quiet environment to be carried out meticulously. This was because every time there was a slight deviation, it could lead to the failure of the seal. This requirement was even higher than inscriptions, which was the reason why sealers were rare. The failure of the inscription was just a waste of some materials, but once the seal failed, it was the life of a newborn monster beast. Back then, when she was the head of the Bailey family, the young people of the family were in great need of contract beasts. However, there were no sealing masters in the family. Every time Patriarch Bailey returned from hunting young demonic beasts, he would need to pay a large sum of money to invite a sealing master. Sometimes, he might not even be able to invite a sealing master back. Under such circumstances, in a fit of anger, she learned the sealing technique herself. Fortunately, her mental strength was already very strong, and when she was learning alchemy, her mental strength had become even sharper. This allowed her to learn the sealing technique a little faster. Even though she was talented, she still spent a lot of time on her studies. Since then, she had been in charge of sealing the clan's contracted beasts. Through this practice, her sealing technique became better and better, saving the clan a lot of money. However, after her inexplicable death, the clan had to hire a new sealing master again. Hearing Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone nodded and turned their attention to the outside. They only hoped that those cultivators would leave quickly and that this cave was hidden enough to not be discovered by other cultivators. Chapter 1545. Not long after, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others noticed the commotion outside. "Damn those Tiangang dynasty cultivators. If I find them, I will make them regret what they did today," Fang Wenqing said angrily. "Captain, we don't know which direction the Tiangang dynasty cultivators went. What if we are found by the Cloud Sword dynasty or the Martial dynasty?" a cultivator asked worriedly. Fang Wenqing looked angrily at the man who spoke. "You're asking me? Who am I supposed to ask? That's why I asked you to hurry up and find them." Bailey Hongzhuang and the others heard the commotion outside and could not help but smile. Sure enough, as they expected, Fang Wenqing was flustered and exasperated. Just as Yuan Xiaoman was about to speak, Bailey Hongzhuang made a gesture and stopped her from speaking. Just like how they could sense the situation of Fang Wencheng and the others, if they spoke, even if their voices were very soft, Fang Wencheng and the others could still hear them. Therefore, they could only conceal all their auras to ensure that they would not be seen. Yuan Xiaoman immediately covered her mouth. She almost forgot that the situation in front of her did not allow for any mistake. Ugh! Suddenly, a sound was heard. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were stunned for a moment before realizing that it was the sound of the wind spirit tiger cub. Seeing this, Bailey Hongzhuang, Mo Yunjue, and Bailey Hongzhuang quickly covered the wind spirit tiger cub's mouth. If they were discovered by the Azure Forest Dynasty cultivators now, there would be more and more cultivators behind them. By then, it would be really troublesome. Fang Wencheng was about to leave after scanning the surroundings when he suddenly heard a soft sound. He could not help but stop and look in front of him in confusion. He did not know what that sound was. Fang Wencheng slowly approached Bailey Hongzhuang's position, while Bailey Hongzhuang and the others were already holding the weapons in their hands. Once Fang Wencheng came to the cave, they would immediately attack. No matter what, they could not give up on the wind spirit tiger cub. However, just as Fang Wencheng was getting closer to Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, another aura came from behind. Fang Wencheng's face turned cold when he saw Yu Junfei. Although they had a short cooperation before, the conflict between the two teams could not be resolved. Yu Junfei glanced at the situation of Fang Wencheng and the others and said to the cultivators in the team, "There is no one here. Everyone, continue forward." Seeing this, Fang Wencheng's expression became even uglier. Yu Junfei was completely treating him as an errand boy. Thinking of this, Fang Wencheng immediately called the other cultivators in the team. He would not let the Tiangang dynasty's cultivators find the cultivators from Tiangang dynasty's dynasty. After sensing that the Azure Forest dynasty and Cloud Sword dynasty's cultivators had left, Bailey Hongzhuang and the others breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, they were not discovered. Bailey Hongzhuang released the hand that was covering the wind spirit tiger cub's mouth. The wind spirit tiger cub was looking at Bailey Hongzhuang in shock as it panted heavily. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others looked at each other and smiled. After the teams from the two dynasties left, the rest was much easier. Chapter 1546. Bailey Hongzhuang and the others stayed in the cave for a day and night. After Baisha released his aura, the monster beasts did not dare to approach the cave. Originally, everyone relaxed after waiting for all the cultivators to leave, but Mo Yunjue still reminded everyone that the others might come back again. At first, everyone didn't believe it, but in the end, the facts clearly told them that it was all true. In the latter half of the night, the cultivators of the Martial dynasty came back again and searched the area again. In the end, they did not find their presence and left. It was not until later that there were no more movements from the cultivators of the other teams that everyone was completely relieved. This Martial dynasty's cultivator is truly extraordinary. That Cheng Hufeng is really meticulous in his work. If it wasn't for Mo Yunjue reminding us, I'm afraid we would have been discovered. Yuan Jixin's face could not hide the sigh. Who would have thought that there would be cultivators coming back to check again in the latter half of the night? Bailey Hongzhuang also felt a little emotional. Just as she expected, among the teams of the three dynasties, the cultivators of the Martial dynasty were the most cunning and intelligent. The fact was indeed so. This Qing Hifeng's conduct made people feel a little apprehensive. In comparison, the cultivators of the Azure Forest dynasty and the Cloud Sword dynasty were much easier to deal with. Fortunately, we found this cave, otherwise we would have had to run all the way. Bai Junyu's face was full of smiles. Indeed, all of this was destined by fate. If they had not accidentally found this cave, their situation would be much worse than now. Hearing the word run, the three beasts could not help but look at each other. What they hated the most now was running away. In the desert world, they had to run for their lives almost every day, and it was really a life and death escape. Then what do we do now? Continue to stay here? Yuan Xiaoman could not help but ask. Mo Yunjua's eyes rippled with the light of thinking, and his voice was deep and confident. The best way for us now is to stay here. The cultivators of the various dynasties can't find us in the forest, so they will definitely wait for us near the city. Once we go to the city now, we will definitely be discovered. Staying here is the best choice. Hearing this, Dongfang Yu couldn't help but frown. Then, are we going to stay here for a while? With the character of the three great dynasties that were unwilling to give up, it was probably impossible for them to leave the city in a short period of time. As a result, they were trapped here. We need to stay here for now. I believe that the three dynasties won't be able to last long in the city. They will leave soon. Bailey Hongzhuang's eyes were filled with bright and resplendent light. The cultivators of the three dynasties were full of confidence in themselves. Because in the end, they would all appear in the same place. As long as the cultivators of the three dynasties found them before that, the wind spirit tiger would still belong to them. Hearing this, everyone nodded. Given the current situation, this was their only choice. Let's complete the contract with the wind spirit tiger cub while we're outside. In this way, even if we encounter cultivators from the other dynasties, they would be helpless. Chapter 1547. Following Bailey Hongzhuang's words, a smile appeared on everyone's face. The cultivators from the various empires would never have thought that they would form a contract with a wind spirit tiger. As such, when they met again, many cultivators would not attack them after knowing that they had no hope. That was because it was meaningless. The only thing they needed to be wary of was the cultivators from the three empires, especially the Azure Forest Empire. With Fang Wenqing's narrow-minded character, even if he knew that there was no hope, he would still want to kill them to vent his anger. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at everyone and said, "There are only 3 wind spirit tiger cubs here. It's hard to decide who will form a contract with them." Hearing this, everyone's expression changed a little. Everyone wanted to have a contract beast. Moreover, the wind spirit tiger was already an excellent contract beast. No one was willing to miss out on it. However, there were so many of them but only 3 wind spirit tigers. Therefore, there was bound to be someone who did not have one. The biggest problem was how to distribute them. For a moment, everyone fell into silence. It was indeed difficult for them to give up on such a matter. "I don't need it," Mo Yunjue said slowly. As soon as this was said, everyone looked at Mo Yunjue in surprise. In fact, from their point of view, Mo Yunjue would definitely get a wind spirit tiger. This was because Mo Yunjue was extremely important in their team. He was powerful and would be of great help to the team. Therefore, 1 wind spirit tiger belonged to Mo Yunjue and the rest had no objections. However, Mo Yunjue chose to give up. This was beyond their expectations. Mo Yunjue? Everyone looked at Mo Yunjue in confusion. They did not understand why Mo Yunjue chose to give up. Mo Yunjue waved his hand and said, "In comparison, you guys need it more than I do. I don't want to form a contract with it for the time being." Everyone frowned. They felt that Mo Yunjue was doing this for them. They immediately said, "This." Bailey Hongzhuang looked deeply at Mo Yunjue. She knew that Mo Yunjue was speaking his true thoughts. Although she didn't know Mo Yunjue's identity, she was certain that Mo Yunjue's identity wasn't simple. With Mo Yunjue's status, it shouldn't be difficult for him to get a contract beast. What's more, Mo Yunjue was so strong, his contracted beast should also be very strong. Although the wind spirit tiger's level was not bad, compared to Mo Yunjue, there was still a gap. Then, other than me and Mo Yunjue, all of you have a chance. In order to be fair, you all stand in a circle. I will put the 3 wind spirit tigers in the middle. Whoever the wind spirit tiger goes to will be the master of the wind spirit tiger. How about it? Bailey Hongzhuang looked at everyone. This was the best way she had come up with so far. "Of course, if you can discuss it yourself, then we will do it according to your discussion." "Boss, don't you need the wind spirit tiger?" Xia Jiqing saw that Bailey Hongzhuang had also withdrawn and couldn't help but ask. Boss's ability to contract beasts was obviously different from theirs. Each of them could only contract one beast, but Bailey Hongzhuang was obviously not the same. This wind spirit tiger was also a very good beast. Did Boss not need it? Chapter 1548. Everyone couldn't help but look at Baisher, Xiao He and Xiao Bai beside Bailey Hongzhuang. It had to be said that Bailey Hongzhuang really didn't need them. The existence of Baisher, the Beast King, was already very amazing. Although they didn't know what species Xiao He and Xiao Bai were, they were very clear about how powerful Xiao He and Xiao Bai were. In comparison, the wind spirit tigers were not as powerful as Bailey Hongzhuang's three-contract beast. Mo Yunjue chuckled, "You should think about your own situation." Hearing this, Xia Jiqing and the others looked at each other. Hongzhuang, let's do as you say. This was indeed the best way so far. No matter who the wind spirit tigers chose, everyone would not be unwilling. It was really a good idea. After seeing everyone agree, Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. Okay. Soon, everyone stood in a circle. Bailey Hongzhuang put the three wind spirit tigers in the center, and then she walked out of the circle. Now it was up to the three wind spirit tigers to choose. Everyone's eyes fell on the three wind spirit tigers. They were curious as to which of the three wind spirit tigers would be fated with. The three wind spirit tigers stood in the same place, apparently not knowing what choice they were making. Xia Jiqing and the others were looking at the wind spirit tigers curiously and nervously, only hoping that the wind spirit tigers would choose them. The three wind spirit tigers squinted their small eyes. In fact, they had just been born and their eyes were not fully open yet. Even when they walked, they were still staggering. At this moment, they were constantly sniffing the air and walking forward. The way they walked was indescribably cute. The process of choosing was very slow because the three wind spirit tiger cubs were simply walking forward aimlessly, stopping and even rolling. Baisher looked at the appearance of the three wind spirit tigers and his eyes flashed with a bright and strange light. Back then, when Master had just done July with it, it was probably similar to this. Xia Jiqing and the others couldn't help but bend down and look at the three wind spirit tigers. Their cute appearance really made people's hearts soften. In this process, the three wind spirit tigers also slowly approached the front. However, when the wind spirit tigers made their choice, everyone looked at this scene and their expressions changed a bit. Because the wind spirit tigers chose Xia Jiqing, Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman. After noticing this scene, Xia Jiqing's group's eyes couldn't help but have some fluctuations in their eyes. Gong Xiaoqing and the others looked at Xia Jiqing and the others. They did not expect that the three wind spirit tigers would make such a choice. This was too special. Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue looked at each other and fell into silence. Bailey Hongzhuang had always known that Bai Junyu liked Xia Jiqing, but Xia Jiqing had always been slow. In addition, although Bai Junyu usually talked a lot, when it came to critical moments, he always dropped the chain. Whenever it was time to confess, Bai Junyu would be too stupid to speak. However, this matter was only known to those who had known Bai Junyu for a long time. Since Yuan Xiaoman joined the team, everyone found that Yuan Xiaoman and Bai Junyu were very familiar with each other. Bai Junyu talked to Yuan Xiaoman more than Xia Jiqing. Chapter 1549. However, Bai Junyu himself was also a fool. Everyone had already felt that this situation was unusual, but Bai Junyu didn't know anything. Now that the relationship between Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman was getting closer, Yuan Jixin, who didn't know the reason, thought that Yuan Xiaoman and Bai Junyu were a couple. Therefore, Yuan Jixin was also very good to Bai Junyu, and sometimes created opportunities for Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman. As a result, this matter was completely messed up. Because this was a relationship problem between Xia Jiqing, Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman, no one dared to intervene. However, now that the three wind spirit tigers had made such a choice, this love triangle was really not messy enough. Even though Mo Yunjue didn't know much about what had happened before, during this period of time, with his keen observation, he also discovered the problem. The atmosphere froze for a moment, and everyone looked at each other. For such a strange situation, everyone really didn't know what to say. After a while, Bailey Hongzhuang took the lead and said, "Since the Wind Spirit Tiger has made a choice, then I will seal the Wind Spirit Tiger first." With Bailey Hongzhuang's words, everyone nodded, and the slightly awkward atmosphere eased a bit. Bailey Hongzhuang picked up a Wind Spirit Tiger and turned to the crowd. "You wait outside now, I will go into the cave to seal it." "Okay." Bailey Hongzhuang walked into the cave with the Wind Spirit Tiger, and the three beasts stayed at the door. This kind of very important thing couldn't be disturbed, otherwise it would be terrible if it failed. Bailey Hongzhuang sat in front of the Wind Spirit Tiger, and the yuan power and mental power in her body spread out at the same time. The requirement for the seal was very high for the mental power, and the consumption was also very high, so yuan power was used as an auxiliary. What she needed to do was to use her mental power to write a rune and seal the Wind Spirit Tiger in it. Bailey Hongzhuang divided her mental power into strands of filament-like existence, and used them to write the rune. In her previous life, her cultivation was stronger than it was now. In this life, her elemental energy was undoubtedly weaker. However, after transmigrating, her spiritual energy was much stronger than before. In this way, although there was a certain gap in strength, she believed that the success rate wouldn't be much lower than in her previous life. Under the control of Bailey Hongzhuang, strands of spiritual power intertwined and weaved into the shape of a rune. Just looking at the countless strands of spiritual energy was enough to make one's scalp tingle. Even Bailey Hongzhuang's forehead was covered in sweat. That was because the consumption of energy was not small at all. While Bailey Hongzhuang was doing the sealing, the Wind Spirit Tiger cub stared blankly at Bailey Hongzhuang. It sat there motionlessly, as if an invisible force had sealed it. As Bailey Hongzhuang sealed the Wind Spirit Tiger cub in the cave, Gong Shaoqing and the others sat down on the ground. They had never been in contact with a sealing master, and they didn't know how long Bailey Hongzhuang would take to seal it. The only thing they could do was to wait outside. "I don't know if the boss can succeed." There was a touch of worry in Xia Jiqing's eyes. It was the Wind Spirit Tiger that ran to her side that was being sealed. Chapter 1550. With Hongzhuang's strength, I believe there won't be a problem. Dongfang Yu looked at Xia Jiqing with a smile. From the time they met Hongzhuang until now, as long as Hongzhuang had confidence in something, there had never been a problem. Xia Jiqing held her chin with both hands, and there was still some worry in her eyes. She had always believed in the strength of the boss, but she had never heard that the boss could seal a monster beast. Moreover, she had never known that the boss could seal a monster beast. Although she and the Wind Spirit Tiger cub had only met for a short time, looking at its ignorant and cute appearance, her heart softened. Even if the contract could not be successful, she did not want the Wind Spirit Tiger cub to die. "Yes, when has the boss ever had a problem?" Yuan Jixin smiled. "There will be no problem." Xia Jiqing nodded slightly. She also believed in the boss. The boss had never had a problem doing things, and she believed that this time would be no exception. Before, she was worried and confused, but now that she thought about it carefully, her mood calmed down. Mo Yunjue sat quietly on the side and entered a state of cultivation. After everyone saw Mo Yunjue like this, there was a trace of admiration in their hearts. In their team, the strongest were Mo Yunjue and Bailey Hongzhuang. Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue had always been meticulous in their cultivation, and seized all the time to cultivate. In the process of getting along, they had already understood each other clearly. Just like Bailey Hongzhuang and Mo Yunjue on the Heaven Stairway, their performance was so amazing. For a long time, they had also been cultivating desperately, but compared to Bailey Hongzhuang, there was still a certain gap. Gong Shaoqing's feelings were the deepest. When he was at the Azure Water School, everyone said that he was the one who cultivated the most. Dongfang Yu felt that he did not know how to enjoy life, and only knew how to cultivate foolishly. Ever since he met Bailey Hongzhuang, he knew that there was always someone better than him. Bailey Hongzhuang was far more serious than him in cultivation. This was also the reason why Bailey Hongzhuang was stronger than them even though she was younger than them. Thinking of this, Gong Xiaoqin couldn't help but glance at Dongfang Yu. Back then, although Dongfang Yu's cultivation talent was not bad, he had never put much effort into it. Later on, they suddenly started cultivating desperately because of Bailey Hongzhuang. Speaking of which, after meeting Bailey Hongzhuang, their lives changed a lot. In the next moment, Gong Xiaoqin also entered a state of cultivation. The other cultivators closed their eyes to cultivate, only Xia Jiqing, Bai Junyu, and Yuan Xiaoman were still sitting and waiting. Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman had to look after the wind spirit tiger cub, so they couldn't cultivate. Xia Jiqing was wholeheartedly concerned about the matter of Bailey Hongzhuang's seal. Even if she was cultivating, she could not calm down and could only wait. Jiqing, Hongzhuang will succeed. Bai Junyu looked at Xia Jiqing, his eyes full of concern and relief. Hearing this, Xia Jiqing nodded slightly. Just as she was about to talk to Bai Junyu, Yuan Xiaoman's voice sounded. Junyu is right, Jiqing, you don't have to worry too much. Boss will definitely be fine. Yuan Xiaoman was sitting beside Bai Junyu, her charming face filled with a thick smile. Xia Jiqing swallowed back the words she was about to say. She immediately nodded, and the smile on her face revealed a bit of awkwardness that only she understood. Chapter 1551. Bai Junyu noticed that Xia Jiqing's expression seemed to be a little different, and his eyes could not help but flash a hint of doubt. Jiqing, did you want to say something just now? Xia Jiqing looked up and saw Yuan Xiaoman and Bai Junyu looking at her with concern. She shook her head, no. Oh. Bai Junyu looked away with some disappointment. He wanted to confess to Xia Jiqing more than once, but he couldn't say anything at the critical moment. Moreover, he recently faintly felt that the distance between him and Jiqing was gradually alienating, but he didn't understand what was going on. It was really depressing. He wanted to find a chance to ask Jiqing, but he was worried that all this was just his own misunderstanding. If Jiqing didn't like him, then once he confessed, their relationship would become particularly awkward. When he thought of this, he was even more unable to say it. Junyu, what name are you going to give the contract beast after you contract it? Yuan Xiaoman teased the wind spirit tiger cub in front of her while asking Bai Junyu. Hearing this, Bai Junyu thought for a while, then looked at Xia Jiqing next to him and said, Jiqing, what name are you going to give it? Xia Jiqing was slightly stunned, and she couldn't help but think about it. She really didn't think about this problem before. Once the contract was made, she would have to give the contract beast a name. Just what name should she give it? Xia Jiqing frowned. It was really not easy to give a name. Suddenly, Xia Jiqing's eyes fell on Xiao He and Xiao Bai. Boss's name was so simple, she should follow boss when it came to naming. My contract beast's name will be Xiao Feng. Xia Jiqing smiled slightly. Wind Spirit Tiger, she chose the first word. Not only was it easy to remember, but it was also the same type as Xiao He and Xiao Bai. In this way it was very cooperative. Xiao He and Xiao Bai also nodded after hearing Xia Jiqing's name. Sure enough, it wasn't just their master who didn't have a talent for naming. Xia Jiqing wasn't much better. Now that they had another contracted beast to keep them company, they were happy to see it. After hearing the name given by Bailey Hongzhuang, Bai Junyu immediately understood the origin of the name and had an idea in his mind. If that's the case, then my contract beast will be called Little Tiger. It's simple and easy to remember. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but look at Bai Junyu. One was Little Wind, the other was Little Tiger. Their contract beasts were both wind spirit tigers, which was great. Yuan Xiaoman frowned, her mind constantly thinking, and said, Then my contract beast will be called Shaoling, adding up to a wind spirit tiger, isn't that good? With Yuan Xiaoman's words falling, Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu also nodded slightly, but they couldn't help but feel a little strange. Gong Shaoqing and the others, who were originally cultivating, heard the words of Xia Jiqing and the others, and the helplessness in their hearts became deeper and deeper. If this complicated love triangle continued to develop like this, they really didn't know what it would become in the future. They wanted to remind Bai Junyu, but they couldn't understand Xia Jiqing's thoughts. In fact, Xia Jiqing had never expressed her thoughts. When Yuan Xiaoman had not joined the team, Xia Jiqing and Bai Junyu were also like this. Chapter 1552. After the three beasts saw this scene, they also looked at each other. They knew nothing about this kind of thing, so it was better to leave these things to them to deal with. Xia Jiqing fell into silence, and her eyes couldn't help but look at the cave. She could feel the faint fluctuations of power coming from inside. However, she was not clear about the specific situation inside. Yuan Xiaoman sat next to Bai Junyu and talked with him from time to time. Sometimes there was a burst of laughter, apparently they were talking happily. Feeling such an atmosphere, Xia Jiqing didn't know why she felt that her mood was particularly irritable. She immediately closed her eyes and entered the state of cultivation. It was a pity that under such mood, her heart could not calm down at all, nor could she enter the state of cultivation. She could only carefully listen to the conversation between Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman. Yuan Xiaoman and Bai Junyu were actually just talking about some trivial things, but Xia Jiqing felt that her heart was blocked for a while, and she didn't know what to say. It was as if there were countless flies flying around her, making her very irritable. She just wanted to be free from it. Under such circumstances, Xia Jiqing only felt that time was really passing like a year, and it was extremely difficult to bear. In the cave, Bailey Hongzhuang was meticulously carrying out the seal. Her mental power had been tight, carefully controlling every change. From the time she crossed over to the present, she had not used the seal for a long time. Therefore, she had to be more careful. Not to mention that this wind spirit tiger cub was her contract beast. Just thinking about the trust and expectation in the mother's eyes when she left, she must be careful and not let the wind spirit tiger be in danger. This time was very slow for Xia Jiqing, and it was also a very slow process for Bailey Hongzhuang. The sweat on Bailey Hongzhuang's forehead slowly dripped down, but her eyes were tightly fixed on the seal in front of her, and there was no distraction. Finally, under the precise control of Bailey Hongzhuang, a seal quietly formed. Bailey Hongzhuang's hand gesture changed, and a seal quietly appeared, and then the wind spirit tiger cub was sealed inside. A dazzling light appeared, bright and dazzling. Even Gong Shaoqing and the others, who were cultivating outside the cave, could not help but open their eyes when they noticed the light. That was because the light was simply too dazzling. Xia Jiqing couldn't help but stand up. Her hands were tightly clasped together. She looked at the cave nervously and worriedly. She didn't know what the final result would be. Did the boss succeed? Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman also stood up at the same time, nervously looking at the cave, hoping that Hongzhuang would bring them good news. However, Bailey Hongzhuang did not come out even after the light disappeared. After noticing this situation, Xia Jiqing's heart couldn't help but sink. Boss hasn't come out yet, could it be that he failed? Hearing this, Gong Shaoqing and the others looked at each other. They had never seen a seal before and naturally did not understand what this situation meant. Only Mo Yunjue's eyes flashed with a light of understanding. He had seen sealing masters seal demonic beasts before, so he was not unfamiliar with this scene. Chapter 1553. With Mo Yunjue's voice falling, everyone looked at Mo Yunjue. For a long time, Mo Yunjue had been an experienced and knowledgeable existence in their team. Mo Yunjue had heard a lot of things that they didn't understand. It was precisely because of this that everyone had always admired Mo Yunjue. Boss succeeded? Xia Jiqing looked nervously at Mo Yunjue. Then why hasn't boss come out yet? Mo Yunjue shook his head slightly. According to my understanding, the appearance of that light is a sign of success, but why Hong Zhuang hasn't come out, I don't know. Gong Shaoqing and the others looked at each other. Even Mo Yunjue didn't know the specific situation, they didn't know either. There was only one way now, and that was to wait, because no one dared to go in and disturb Bailey Hongzhuang. Once it affected Bailey Hongzhuang, it was likely to cause Hong Zhuang to fail. This was something that no one wanted to see. Compared to the various guesses in everyone's hearts, Bailey Hongzhuang sat on the ground and gasped for breath, wiping the sweat on her forehead. She had to admit that this seal was indeed a laborious thing. It was no wonder that every sealer would ask for a lot of rewards when sealing, because this was really not an easy thing to do. After not sealing for such a long time, she only felt that her technique was a bit rusty compared to before, so she spent more energy. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at the intact monster egg in front of her. Although she still looked very tired, there was a smile on her face. Fortunately, her seal was a success. She didn't fail. Under the anxious waiting of Xia Jiqing and the others, Bailey Hongzhuang slowly appeared in everyone's sight. Seeing this, Xia Jiqing and the others immediately greeted her. "Boss, did you succeed?" Looking at Xia Jiqing's nervous look, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, "Guess?" Seeing that Bailey Hongzhuang was still in the mood to joke with her, Xia Jiqing immediately knew the result. Success. Bailey Hongzhuang nodded slightly. "It's inside. Go take a look." Xia Jiqing's eyes lit up and she immediately walked into the cave. She couldn't wait to see the appearance of the monster egg. After entering the cave, Xia Jiqing saw a yellow monster egg appear in front of her. The round and smooth eggshell was covered with complicated patterns. At a glance, it gave off a mysterious feeling, causing people to involuntarily feel a little shocked. Xia Jiqing took the monster beast egg out of the cave. Bai Junyu and the others also greeted her after seeing the monster beast egg. In reality, this was the first time they had seen a demonic beast egg, and they couldn't help but feel a wave of novelty in their hearts. So this is a demonic beast egg. Yuan Xiaoman's face was full of curiosity. Although she had a rough idea of what a monster beast egg looked like, seeing it with her own eyes still gave her a strong feeling. "It's amazing." Bai Junyu couldn't help but sigh. Hong Zhuang is really amazing. She can even master this sealing technique. It's really admirable. Boss is simply omnipotent. Xia Jiqing looked at the monster egg in her hand, her eyes full of excitement and joy. As long as she contracted it, she would have her own contract beast. She never thought that one day she would really be able to get a contract beast. This feeling was really delightful. Chapter 1554. Just as everyone was curiously sizing up the demonic beast egg, Mo Yunjue slowly walked to Bailey Hongzhuang's side. His handsome face was filled with concern as he asked, "How are you?" He knew that a sealer would consume a lot of mental power during the sealing process. He noticed Bailey Hongzhuang's pale face and weak expression. Come to think of it, Bailey Hongzhuang did not come out previously because she had consumed too much of her mental power and could not come out for a while. In his impression, a sealer was not young anymore. They were rather powerful, and their mental power was even more shocking. Given Bailey Hongzhuang's strength and age, it was already very shocking that she could seal a demonic beast. Moreover, Bailey Hongzhuang was sealing a wind spirit tiger, which was even more remarkable. Logically speaking, this was simply impossible, but it happened right in front of his eyes, so he had to believe it. Sensing Mo Yunjue's concern, Bailey Hongzhuang smiled and said, "I'm fine. I'm just a little exhausted. I'll be able to recover after resting for a while." You won't be able to fully recover your mental power in a short period of time. You must rest well. There's no rush for this, so don't risk your life. His dark and deep eyes were filled with emotions, and there was even a trace of heartache in the depths of his eyes. As he spent more time with Bailey Hongzhuang, he became more aware of Bailey Hongzhuang's hard-working personality. No matter what it was, she would always do her best to do it. Regarding this point, even many men were ashamed of their inferiority. She was always so bright, so beautiful, and so memorable. The longer he spent time with her, the stronger his feelings were. Bailey Hongzhuang did not notice the change in Mo Yunjue's expression. She immediately smiled and said, "I understand, don't worry." Given her current state, it was indeed impossible for her to seal a second time. At the very least, she would need to rest for a while to recover. Otherwise, not to mention her body's condition, the seal would fail if there was even the slightest mistake. They had spent so much effort to obtain 3 wind spirit tiger cubs, so they definitely could not treat them like this. After Xia Jiqing and the others observed the monster eggs for a moment, they returned to Bailey Hongzhuang's side and asked with concern, "Boss, how are you?" Xia Jiqing was a little annoyed. She was so focused on the monster beast egg that she didn't even notice her boss's body. Thinking about it, boss must have used up a lot of energy to seal them. Bailey Hongzhuang smiled. "I'm fine. Don't worry." As she spoke, Bailey Hongzhuang's gaze landed on the demonic beast egg. She continued, "This demonic beast egg has been successfully sealed. You only need to drip a drop of blood on it and perform the 7 months ritual with it." Hearing this, Xia Jiqing nodded slightly and sat down beside Bailey Hongzhuang. "Boss, thank you." If Bailey Hongzhuang had not thought of a way to deal with the various dynasties, they would not have been able to obtain the Wind Spirit Tiger Cub. If Boss had not successfully sealed the Wind Spirit Tiger with the sealing technique, she would not have been able to obtain a Wind Spirit Tiger contract beast. Bailey Hongzhuang glanced at Xia Jiqing, her lips curled into a smile. "With the feelings between you and me, saying such words is too much of an outsider." Just as Xia Jiqing had given her the 9-tailed zither, they never cared about these things. Chapter 1555. She had not practiced the sealing technique in her previous life for a long time. When Bailey Hongzhuang used it again, she only felt a sense of familiarity that she had not felt for a long time. She had never been willing to forget the skills she had learned because of lack of practice. Sometimes she had the opportunity to try it out, which was not necessarily a bad thing. Looking at Bailey Hongzhuang's warm smile, Xia Jiqing's eyes became brighter. For a long time, the most fortunate thing for her was knowing the boss and following her until now. Otherwise, she would still be a student of the Kanglan College. Perhaps she had entered the special enrollment class, but it was far from comparable to her current results. Bailey Hongzhuang looked at Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman beside Xia Jiqing and said, "It takes a lot of mental power to seal a monster egg. I can't continue to seal it today. Let's continue tomorrow." Listening to Bailey Hongzhuang's words, Bai Junyu and Yuan Xiaoman quickly said, "We are not in a hurry, you have a good rest." Bailey Hongzhuang being able to help them seal the monster egg was already something that made them feel very fortunate. How could they have any other requests? Bailey Hongzhuang and the others returned to the cave again. In this forest, there were still other teams of cultivators passing by. Therefore, they still had to ensure that they were not discovered. Fortunately, the area where they were located was very remote. Generally, cultivators would not come here. With the improvement of their strength now, they did not have to worry about spending the night outside. However, with the existence of Baisher, they did not need to worry about this problem at all. It was because of Baisher's aura that there were no monsters within 100 miles. Therefore, when the cultivators passed by here, they did not stop at all and left directly. Compared to the calmness of Bailey Hongzhuang and the others, the mood of the cultivators of the 3 dynasties was extremely bad. They had searched the surrounding area again and again, but the cultivators of the Tiangang dynasty seemed to have disappeared into thin air. They could not find any traces at all. This really made them annoyed. Under their observation, they realized that the cultivators from the other dynasties were also unable to find it. Even with so many of them searching together, they still could not find it. The cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty were truly extraordinarily capable. I don't know where these guys went. They couldn't have gone to a city far away, could they? Fang Wenqing had an impatient look on his face. Of all people, it just had to be a cultivator from the Tiangang dynasty. Compared to his previous arrogant words, he now felt that his face had been slapped painfully. Our pursuit speed isn't slow. If they've gone to a city far away, we should be able to find some clues. Qing Hifeng's brows were tightly furrowed. After they had not found anything, they had met up with each other. They both knew that the other had not found anything. The characteristics of Bailey Hongzhuang and her group were very obvious. As long as any cultivator saw them, they would definitely be able to recognize them. However, along the way, they had asked many cultivators who came from other places, but they did not get any information at all. Just this point alone was enough to prove that this was not the case. Perhaps they had overlooked something in their search. Forget it. Let's just guard this city. They'll come out sooner or later. Chapter 1556. Even if they found the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty on the day of the assessment, they could still snatch it. He did not believe that the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty were so capable that they could hide from their sight during this period of time. Hearing Yu Junfei's words, Fang Wenqing also nodded his head. He had already patrolled this area several times and had long lost his patience. It was impossible for him to continue patrolling, so he might as well wait here peacefully. The cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty would not be able to run anywhere. Qing Hufeng saw that Fang Wenqing and Yu Junfei had made up their minds, and a complicated light flashed across his dark eyes. For some reason, he had an ominous feeling in his heart. In the beginning, he did not take the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty seriously. However, after this simple contact, he felt that the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty were completely out of his control, and it was beyond his expectations. He had a feeling that the development of the situation would not be as simple as they thought. Perhaps the other party would do something unexpected again. However, given the current situation, he really couldn't think of anything unexpected that would happen. Even if the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty found helpers, as long as the cultivators from the three dynasties joined forces, ordinary people would not be their match at all. Thinking of this, Qing Hufeng let go of the worry in his heart and decided to wait in the city with Yu Junfei and the rest. He had specially arranged for the cultivators to pay attention to the outside of the city. Even if Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest wanted to go around the city, they would still notice them. He did not believe that Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest would not enter the city. Bringing along 3 wind spirit tiger cubs was already extremely eye-catching. Not to mention them, even if other cultivators saw this scene, they would also attack them. Therefore, this secret could not be kept. He believed that even if the cultivators from the Tiangang dynasty avoided them, this news would spread to their ears soon. However, the cultivators from the 3 dynasties had never expected that Bailey Hongzhuang and the rest would directly form a contract with the Wind Spirit Tiger. If they continued to search now, there would still be a glimmer of hope. However, when they chose to wait, this hope was completely shattered. The next day, everyone walked out of the cave again. Bailey Hongzhuang's mental energy had recovered after a night's rest. She immediately began to seal the second Wind Spirit Tiger. But this time, the one who was nervous and worried was Yuan Xiaoman. After all, every seal had a certain amount of risk, and the success rate was never 100%. While Bailey Hongzhuang was sealing the Wind Spirit Tiger, Xia Jiqing was making a contract with the monster egg outside the cave. Last night, everyone had gathered together, and Boss needed to rest, so she did not make the contract. Now was the best time to make the contract. After knowing that Xia Jiqing was going to do July, Gong Xiaoqing and the others stood up and guarded her. He also had to be careful with the contract. If he was disturbed, the consequences of failing the contract would be very serious. While Bailey Hongzhuang and others were busy with their own affairs, Di Baichen of Tiangong sect also showed a smile on his face.